What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we are making strength and conditioning not boring anymore. And today I'm joined by Coach John Griffin, who is the Director of Player Performance at the Atlanta Falcons. Inside this episode, we talk about what it's like to work with NFL athletes on the day-to-day. If this is something that you're interested in, this episode will explain all the details and intricacies on how to work with sport coaches, work with athletes in the in-season, off-season. 2026 ends the 3-year current CEU cycle for the NSCA. Do not wait until December 31st, 2026 to get your CEUs submitted to the NSCA. Get it taken care of now with an annual membership to Strength Coach Network, where you will get access to Performance Coaching 101, 102, 103, with each course giving you access to 2.0 NSCA CEUs. If you also need CSCCA CEUs, those same courses come with 10 CEUs to the CSCCA. If you need CEUs to the NSCA, CSCCA, you need help getting reinstated by going through all the process for the CSCCA from last year, or you want to just make sure you knock out everything for the NSCA with this year, 2026, being a reporting period, please reach out to us at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com. We will get you taken care of. We'll help you get everything lined up so you can keep your certification and you don't have to worry about anything other than coaching your athletes. Again, you can click the link down below for more information or email us at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com.
Yeah, I'm John Griffin. I'm with the Atlanta Falcons right now, currently director of player performance. Been here going on my third year. Prior to this, I was with the Rams for 3 years. And prior to that, spent most of my career in the collegiate side at Baylor, South Carolina, Missouri for like a cup of coffee, Baylor again for another run. So that's pretty much my career in a nutshell. Former player, collegiate, small time spent in the NFL. So kind of been in athletics for the majority of my life.
I've had strength coaches ask me, like, what does it mean when you're in roles like what you're in? Like, what is that, and without getting into the weeds of it or giving away, any privacy things, but like, what does that actually look like when you get to those positions versus is it just head strength coach? Those are things that our listeners are always curious about.
Yeah, I mean, I can't get into the specifics of what I'd say other organizations' task as roles or responsibilities or expectations of that role. Currently, for me here, obviously overseeing strength and conditioning as well as performance science is something that one could charge of kind of doing. I think whenever you're in a position of let's call it director of player performance, human health, VP, whatever you want to call it, I think ultimately you're just trying to provide guidelines for departments to operate within that they're all kind of on the same page, whether that's jargon, expectation, clear roles, responsibilities, standard operating practices in terms of how communication structure is going to look like how are we going to audit one another. I think you're just providing guidelines for really sharp people to operate within. And obviously, the more departments that we kind of step over or interface with, honestly, you're just trying to get that to spread across the building under this big, what we would call a performance roof.
Yeah, and when you're able to do that, things people keep saying is, hey, we're playing in the sandbox together really well.
Yeah, and that's tough, man. You know what I mean? It's almost like I'd call it a football staff of all position coaches,
Ooh.
and we're just getting in a room, and it's like, hey, what do we want to call on Sunday? I'm sure we all are like-minded, and we all have specific agendas, but without a head coach or a coordinator, it's tough to have a mantra, to have an ethos, to have a direction we're going at the end of the day. So I think as much as you can consolidate that. To get everyone rowing the boat in the same direction, the more effective you're going to be as an organization. So, as terms and to answer your question, for my role here, it's really just strength and conditioning and sports science are really kind of underneath this wing in terms of getting those guys on the same direction.
You talked about playing in the NFL. When did you kind of know that it was like, hey, I kind of want to do this? Because for me, it was I didn't play in the NFL. I played it. I loved it. Like I got to see
Yeah.
my body transform. And my offensive line coach, he was the guy that kind of kick-started this for me. What was the thing that scratched the itch or kind of got it going for you?
I think every off season, I just had a unique interest in the process. Like I used to be geeked up about the off season, and I assumed everyone else was too. But like that's not the case. I mean, believe it or not, like that is not the case for some people. Like some people are like, "Hey, bro, I don't want to see a weight room or sniff a run for 2 months, you know what I mean? Until I have to. And I was always a guy that like I loved running, like I love sprinting, I love being at the track, I love being at the gym. Like I was always invigorated with the process. And I kind of felt as football started to kind of see its end that how would I stay close or in proximity to that process and not leaving too far from the game? So I knew that I was always going to be in this, let's call it strength and conditioning space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then the question that I had right there is now, obviously, you love it so much that you do it for a career. How do you then connect with guys that maybe they don't want to? And not only just you, but then practical advice for other listeners out there that they're like, you know what, Griff, I got guys like that. How do I like? I don't want to turn them off. I got to try to meet them where they are. What are some tips
Yeah.
and tricks?
I think learning people first and foremost is critical. And I know a lot of people, kind of use ambiguous terms such as like relationships, and I think that is one part to it. But I think having social awareness and realizing what makes everyone tick. And there's a bunch of different people in the room that you're with. I'm very fortunate of my background. My dad was military. I moved around a ton. Never lived in one place more than 3 years. So I just constantly
Nice.
feel like I was in different rooms, always picking up on whether it was nonverbal body language, verbal body language, reading different types of people. And I would say that it's a strength that I've kind of hang my hat on. But just realizing makes people, what are people's whys? Is it someone else in their family? Is it changing their life? Is it competition? Is it legacy? Is it like, hey, this is just how I'm wired? So like you really got to get a knack for what drives specific people if you really want to kind of get the most out of them. But you wouldn't know that if you don't have a liking to like figure out what makes those people tick outside of just football.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes coaches aren't willing to spend that time though.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough too. If you're not from a lot of different, let's call it diverse backgrounds, or you have like a very diverse friend network. Sometimes you can have subset groups on the roster that you don't connect with as well. And a lot of times, some coaches will clean that up through hiring. Let me hire somebody that can connect with that group of guys more frequently. But I like to hang my hat on that. I feel like I have a wide range to connect with a lot of different type of people on the team, whether they're from Arkansas, Texas, South Miami, New Jersey. I've just lived in so many different places and seen so many people that like I could talk about hunting, I could talk about hiking, I could talk about rod wave, I could talk to you about track and field. You want to go basketball? Let's talk basketball. Just figuring out like what is the niche for this guy, what makes them go, and then trying to form a relationship with them based off of that.
I mean, shoot, hearing you say that makes me think about the fact that like there's niche groups within the niche groups of position groups. It's like,
No
yeah,
doubt.
sometimes the slot receivers are doing stuff completely different than the guys on the outside, or your inside linebackers are different than the outside guys, or your tackle like, and just being
Yep.
able to talk to all of those groups. I don't want any of our listeners out there to kind of negate that and understand that it's not just like, oh, all the this team, this sport, or this group of them. Like you really do have to get to know the person.
You have to get to know the person, man. And honestly, when you put those guys in a training setting, you have to figure out what's the best environment to train these guys. Like some guys are not weightlifters; they're competitors. And if you attack the competitor in the weight room, you're going to get a great training session. But if you think that you're going to go in there and train the weightlifter aspect of this athlete, and now you're frustrated and you're on two separate pages, it's like I don't like that guy. And it's probably just because you just didn't understand him. You know what I mean? A lot of times, some guys, especially skill guys, at its core, most skill guys are competitors. So if you can create
Yeah.
competition in a lift, you can get a really great training session out of a lot of those guys.
Yeah, like we had this kid Marcus Leak when I was at College Park, and I mean he was a fantastic athlete. But he hated the weight room, and he self admitted it. He's
Yeah.
like, I don't like it in here. I like what it can do for me on the field, and so it's
Yeah.
like just being able to tap into and tie into that when you're with him and when you're talking with him and trying to get him to create a situation. But then it was like, hey, we're gonna go compete in this, and it was like, oh, okay, now like okay, I
Yep.
got you now. Like I
Yep.
understand now.
Yep.
Now you talked about a lot of your backgrounds, and before we dive into the Rams, we've talked before about the stuff with the black shirts and operating at a high level and cause. Like I
Yeah.
got to see it in person in terms of how he had things like humming in terms of right, we're going to talk. Everybody was on the same page before the day, and then they post wrap the day when it was over, and then they talk about the next day before it happened. Like that level of detail, I don't think enough people have seen it to understand how important that is. Can you speak to what that did to send your career into its trajectory?
Yeah, I think that was the foundation of, I'll call it my professionalism of transitioning from a former athlete who just loved to train to turning into a professional that works in this space. Just always being prepared, always having a plan, not even for the moment you're in, the day, tomorrow, but even the job that you could have. And always being aware of what your blind spots are, what could happen, probably will happen. So, what are things that could get us popped, get us fired, get us in a situation where, an athlete's maybe in jeopardy of harm. You're kind of just trying to put out fires before they even come about. And having that mindset as a staff is very powerful when you get a bunch of people to unite with that mindset, because you're honestly like where your feet are, but at the same time, you have kind of the ability to live in the future and figure out, do I have a play call for this outcome? Do I have a play call for this outcome? If I expect this to go this way, what's my plan B? What's my plan C? So I felt like Kaz really instilled that in me as a professional to have that mentality. So I never feel like I'm surprised.
And it seems like he's rubbed off on you with the run hot or the burn hot. Like, just be passionate
Yeah.
about what you're doing, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And
and
I think naturally, if that's who you are, it's not difficult to embody that, because I tell my guys all the time, just if you're the right person for the job, who we thought you were, just be yourself. Like, you're gonna raise the floor of everyone around you just by being yourself on an everyday basis. If you feel like it's a grind, or I have to put on this mask or this persona to be this person, I just don't think it's sustainable. And I honestly, I don't think it's genuine. I think a lot of people kind of see through it.
I think that would then relate just to the strength coach. Anybody that's listening to that right now, like, man, maybe that might have just hit their soul as to them in their career.
Yeah. 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 Honestly, I tell people all the time, like, align with something that feels like when you spend time in the building, weeks on the job, it feels like times and fast forward, like you're skiing downhill. If it feels like you're running uphill while you're at work, like, this profession will burn you out. So for us, it feels like I'm skiing, like a week goes by, a month goes by, 3 months go by. It's like I feel like we just started. And for me, just right now, I'm young. I still have that passion around what I do, that it feels like I'm skiing downhill while I'm at work. So it's easy for me to just be myself on an everyday basis along with my staff. But I tell guys all the time, the minute you feel like you're walking uphill, every day feels like a grind, and it takes a lot for you to get in, like that. That's kind of a sign that you're probably losing passion for what you're doing, or you're probably burnt out a little bit.
That's fantastic. So that's the
Yeah.
beginning of the career, right? Then towards the end, where you were not towards the end, but more recently, you were at LA with the Rams and with Lovett. How did that experience and time with him polish what you had first learned when you went from
Yeah.
player into coach?
Yeah, I think you took it from you have this blueprint of how you would like to see it ran, from a collegiate side, and you start building together like, ooh, I would do this. Ooh, I like how that looked. You get to an NFL sitting and you realize, how could this fit within this environment? Completely different ecosystem, completely different demographic in terms of professional athletes that you're training, and you realize that some of the play calls that you probably thought would have worked might not on this level, just because it's a completely different ecosystem. So then you start tweaking things here and there in your head, like, okay, I like that. Ooh, I would do this differently. I think this would work. Probably got to frame it a little bit differently, and you start kind of like building this program again from scratch with the foundation and framework that you've had, from your previous gigs.
I think you're saying that, and you were very active as a good assistant. When you're working in an ecosystem, I've seen times where coaches aren't being that forward thinking. What would be your piece of advice to those that are in that situation where they're listening right now and they're an assistant? How can they then start to plan and take a step back to start to recognize, like, hey, where I'm at right now, I'm not going to be here forever? Because I
Yeah.
know that I was kind of a little bit guilty of that. Like, oh, it's good right now. We're rolling here. We're in the Rose Bowl. We're doing this. Like, it's always going to
Yeah.
be like that. Like, that ain't the case.
It's not. I would say either find a place that allows you to have proximity to a lot of different things, or create that yourself. Don't get complacent with just being in the weight room. Don't get complacent with just running the skill or the D line. Figure out what's going on the other side of the weight room. Go over there and figure out what's going on in terms of the sports science. Some of these force plays jump, these force decks. How does this stuff work? Link up with the dietitian. Figure out, what's your philosophy. And then as you go job to job, like, you're building this Rolodex of information, because now you've met 4 or 5 different dietitians. You've met 4 or 5 different sports scientists coach. You've met 4 or 5 different people that have speed philosophies. So you just build up. It's almost like you have a computer desktop that you're just
Mm.
sliding files to, and you're just consolidating this framework of like, oh, I like that. Ooh, when I met that guy in 2012, I really like what he was doing. 2016, I like what this guy was doing. And on top of that, you just meet good people, so you have a network. But I feel like a lot of times we can silo ourselves in an area of specialty that we feel comfortable in. It would have been very easy for me to just say, I'm going to train skill because I'm a former player and I connect with them very easily. And this is what I'm going to hyper specialize in. I don't need to know anything about anything else.
So as you started to mold and put all of those thoughts together for you from a 10,000 foot perspective, how does that affect and reflect how you integrate and work with your staff and those that are coworkers of yours to then keep the main thing, them being on the field and then performing at a high level on Sunday, Thursday, Monday, Saturday at the end of the season?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, if you talk about just my connection with staff, you have to give autonomy. I think shared ownership is a must. It's not an option. Shared ownership is a must if you want to get the best out of everyone. So I'm big on the hiring process and making sure we're getting the right people, making sure that's a vigorous process, making sure we're in alignment in terms of what values do we want everyone in here to have, making sure that there's clear expectations in terms of like, hey, these are roles and responsibilities out of you. Like, do these match with something you'd be willing to do?
Mm.
And then once you get the right people in the building, I'm big with just delegating and giving autonomy. And letting them go, you know what I mean? Because that's the reason they're here. Like I tell everybody all the time, I feel like I'm the dumbest person on my staff. It's awesome. It's awesome, man. Like I learned something from one of these guys every single day.
Then what does success look like to you? Like, what is your definition of like, hey, this is what we, when, you're interviewing them, you're bringing them in. All right, this is what our vision of success looks like when we're humming and we're buzzing and we're doing all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have multiple levels of this. Obviously, at the very top, it's winning games,
Yep.
and like when we don't have jobs if that's not the case. So at the end of the
Yep.
day, we all have to be in alignment that we want to win. We want to win. I think secondarily, it's making sure that we're all going in the same direction. I'm a big believer in different trains of thought, but at the end of the day, we all have to have the same values. Whether that's curiosity, innovativeness, whether that's high standards, whether that's communicating at a high level. Like we all have to embody those values at the end of the day. And I think again that goes back to your hiring and talent acquisition processes. Like, are these people checking off the box on values that we value as a staff? Are they going to be one of us when they come in? And then on top of that, I think within each person's role, it's going to look different. I'm a big believer in giving everyone a 30, 60, 90-day plan for success. Like when you join the job and you look at this blueprint within 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, if you look at this and you've checked off all these boxes, like I would view that as like a successful runway into this job.
That's fantastic, being able to actually give that to somebody, because I feel like most of the time those people are coming to you like, hey, Griff, I'm going to do this in 30, 60, 90 days. You're like, no. Like, you got
Yeah.
to get assimilated to what we're doing here.
Yeah. So, and then a lot of times you'll have really bright people that will waste a month just kind of being around, not trying to get in the way, just
Mm.
observing, you know what I mean? Like you give somebody a 30, 60, 90-day plan, they can start cooking right now. And if we're bringing you on, we think it's because you have some sort of special talent. Like we want to see that now. So just trying to get someone as comfortable as possible and get rolling as fast as possible to contribute to our staff and the organization.
Yeah, it's almost like, hey, you're a free agent. Like we didn't bring you in just cut. Like you're a
Yeah.
midweek acquisition. Like we can get you rolling on Sunday. Ain't no
Yeah,
problem.
no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, so I'm a big believer in having a really comprehensive onboarding strategy for when we acquire people.
So when people get hired or whenever you guys have your plan of this is how we're going to do things, and we got this plan, but I mean, Mike Tyson said everybody's got a plan to get punched in the face. How have you been
Yep.
able to swing and adapt and have the staff do the same thing, whether it's somebody's getting onboarded, the training plan or whatever things need to get adjusted? You've got all these plans, but what are the contingencies? And then what is advice that our listeners can then use in their own setting to create their contingencies based off of the principles that they can learn from you? Just the, not the specific methods of like, oh, well, we do. No, like, what are some
Yeah.
principles that they can learn?
I think to use your word principles, having a first principles mindset of understanding like the big picture and how one thing fits within everything. Getting everyone included and explaining like why we want to do what we're doing. This is our strategy for how we want to execute it. But if you understand the why and you understand how it fits in everything, you may come up with a better strategy. You may innovate this. You may pivot this in a whole different direction. But I think if everyone doesn't understand how everything fits within the ecosystem and the why behind how we're doing it, you're kind of restricted to just a lane and you know no reason of why it's happening. Similar to being in the offense and knowing why we're calling the play we're calling. Like, why am I running this route? If you don't know, then you don't really have much bandwidth or dexterity to adjust.
No, you're right. And like, I mean, that one hit home for me being an offensive lineman, being like, all right, hey, I'm trying to block this guy because the way that we're trying to run this is we're trying to get the running back out this way. But when you do
Yeah.
all of that, it helps you understand your job better. And that's a perfect analogy to understanding how you're going to work as a staff within the team that you're trying to then support.
Yep.
But
Yep.
then how people may be hearing this like, all right, John, how are you going to feel so comfortable delegating to people and letting them make these decisions when at the end of the day, the buck is going to stop with you?
Yep, yep. I think having clear collisions in terms of meeting, similar to what you said, whether it's after action reports, whether it's getting ready for the next day, whether it's every 4 weeks having a quarterly report in terms of like, hey, let's give a brief rundown of where we're at, and just continuing to provide guidelines of like, hey, I love that. I think we need to look at this. I think we need to get more people involved with this. Consistently having proximity to what's going on when you're delegating. One thing that gives me a lot of comfort in delegating, I'll go back to the job that we mentioned when I worked with Kaz, is I started off my career as a generalist, an intern, black shirt is what we called it. And I had to like make PB&Js and get supplements set up for the nutritionists. I had to grab GPS units and print off catechol reports for the sports scientists. I had to help put together grade level group for our strength and speed power group. I had to go with the head strength and conditioning coach Kaz and put together playlists before what's going to happen in the lift. So like I felt like I was a generalist in a lot of different areas that I feel pretty damn good about my ability to audit a play call within specific areas. Um, Versus if that's completely blind to you, someone kind of bottlenecks all that information. If they're say, hey, we're gonna test jumps on Monday after the game, you're just like, I know nothing about that. So by default, I just gotta kind of listen to you and trust you. I feel like I have enough proximity to those things to say, like, hey, have we thought about this? Or, what about the data being kind of murky if a guy comes off with an ankle? Like, will we have better, cleaner data if we went on a Wednesday?
Yep.
And so I just feel like being a journalist earlier in your career really helps support you when you get to the end of it.
I think anybody that's listening, what he's saying right there is like, don't, especially when you're early on, and then even now as you get later in your career, don't think that you're too good to do something. Because recently, when I was at TCU, I'm watching Kaz doing the same things with the rest of the black shirts of the staff, like knowing actually what's going on, so you're not just only taking somebody from what they said because it's trust, but it's verified because you've done the thing and you understand it. So especially
Yep.
early in your career, none of these tasks are quote unquote beneath you. But I do think that is something that has started to run a little bit rampant where people are like, well, no, I'm this, I don't do that anymore.
Yep. Yep. No doubt. No
And
doubt.
like that just can't be that can't be it whenever you're trying to have a successful organization, because it goes back to what you said at the very beginning. We're trying to win games, and it's all about helping the staff win ball games.
Yeah. And I think when you get to our level, like your staffs aren't huge. We don't have 15 interns. We don't have 10 interns. Sometimes it's 6 people. So how can you maximize, getting the AT staff involved, the dietitian staff involved, strength and conditioning? At some point pre-practice, we may have 10 dietitians because we have 2 on the nutrition staff and 8 other people wearing a dietitian hat.
Yeah.
In a lift, we may have, I'm trying to go from 5 strength coaches to 8. Hey, can we have 3 PTs coaching this specific exercise in this specific area? Put your strength coach hat on. So as much
Yeah.
as we can put on other departments' hats and maximize and kind of upskill some of our talents, like it allows us to be a lot more actionable.
That actually makes me feel way better about something that I said with the head athletic trainer when I was working at Towson. I was the head I was the head strength coach. I had 2 assistants that had other teams. So sometimes I'm out there by myself, and there's one head football strength coach that had an assistant. And I said, listen, when I'm training the whole team and I got athletes that are rehabbing and he's bringing them back and he's doing the dribbles and he's doing any of the exercises, because we sat down beforehand, I go, he's kind of being a strength coach right now, right? Or in season when I'm rehabbing people and they're on the field making sure everybody is, any acute injuries. Am I kind of being an AT? Like, what hat am I wearing? Sure, we understand legally what's going on, but
Yep.
that's something that is valuable to hear for those strength coaches, like that are working at a place where it might be them and an intern or them and somebody else. How can you empower those that you're working with and not trying to pit against and be like, well, the ATs, they did this. No.
Yeah.
Work together. You got to work together. And John just said it, working at the highest level.
Yeah. I think it's identifying the key stakeholders in the building that have those growth mindsets that want to grow outside their lanes. You can find an AT that wants more involvement with in-stage return to play. They want more involvement with learning more nuances of strength and conditioning. Finding a strength coach that wants to know more about nutrition, more maybe acute rehab. And once you find who these key stakeholders are, you can start to form these subset committees or these groups that like, okay, before practice, we're going to help out this. During return to play, we're going to be extensions of the AT staff. So that's powerful, man.
That kind of tees up talking about this high performance blending. That tees up one of the things when you research is you and at Atlanta being able to use BFR. I don't think that's something that people in our world in today in 2026 people are doing as much. How has that been something that you've been able to utilize in a professional football setting?
I mean, it's been critical. Obviously, the onboarding of it as a staff, making sure everyone is understands like the science behind of it, the execution of how we can execute it on a grand scale, and then onboarding the players in terms of like how can this benefit you. In terms of where that's grown from year one to now year three, like it lives as an identity within our programming. Whether that be pre-practice prep, whether that be specific training blocks, whether that be recovery, you'll see it constantly throughout our building, and it's getting to the point where like guys are they understand it. They don't need you to walk them through it. They just walk in and set it up.
And that's just fantastic when you can actually get systems in place and like that again is now where you're humming and things are just rolling.
Yeah, it's freaking awesome, man.
What have you seen? So you've been around the block. You played in the league over a decade ago. Where have you seen that kind of then people doing any BFR or anything that might be kind of nuance? Where did that go off the rails back in the day? And then how have we been able to see things streamlined and move forward in a better direction nowadays?
Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff obviously has existed for a long time. And it's existed, I'd say, primarily in the weight room space.
Ooh.
And I think a lot of field athletes that aren't, huge weightlifters, probably haven't paid much attention to it, but then figure out like how can we, scale this from the weight room to the practice field, to the training on the field when guys are running, to the recovery space. Not to say that it hasn't existed, but I think less people have had let's say proximity or an interest in it because it's existed primarily a lot in the past just in the weight room itself. And again, you talked about having guys that aren't just I don't live, breathe, eat weights. Like I don't want to be swole as shit. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't want all these muscles. It's like, okay, well, there's other ways that this can benefit your game, whether it be recovery, prep, getting you going. And let me show you some ways that it can. And they're like, ooh, that's awesome. I didn't know it was used for that.
And I noticed the same exact thing when working with athletes and myself of how much it doesn't always have to be the strength driver by doing like the 30 rep, wait a minute, 15, 30, 30 seconds, 15,
Yeah.
30, right? Like when you just wear it and you're doing
Hmm.
your quote unquote recovery work or you're doing like your accessory lifts, like how beneficial it is. And when you can just kind of slap it in there, like that has where, excuse me, that has been where I've kind of seen that added benefit and where it would make sense for you and any of those athletes that coaches are working with trying to get that buy-in on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think another thing too is like looking at your schedule. What environmental constraints do you have, and how can that be an edge for you guys? Are you a team that loves to do walkthrough before practice? And some guys feel like maybe, after walking around for 40 minutes, they don't feel like they're ready to go anymore for practice. So can you implement BFR at 30, 40% occlusion where it's not too much and guys are wearing it 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off during the walkthrough? And now they feel like that's a bridge into their warm up where it's like I love the way my legs felt. Can I do that again next time we have walkthrough before practice? Like yeah, that's a great pre call.
And I mean, that's where technology, where like, companies, Hydro being able to get it in and out like that simply for them. So if it is on when you're doing the walkthrough, like technology has continued to make this
Yeah.
process easier for anybody.
Yep. Exactly.
Now, one thing that you did say right there that I want to double tap on to help coaches is practicing. And sometimes nowadays, anybody, whenever they're listening to it, it's 2026. Strength coaches never really used to help with the design of practice back in the day. And now it's I think almost the pendulum swung too far where I think most strength coaches think they have to tell the sport coach when to practice.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case. I think like we
Yeah.
have to remember who we are. We have to work with them. What are some of the things, you've talked extensively on how to, work as a staff and work with the ATs. What are some of your tips to strength coaches on how to best work with sport coaches? Because I think nowadays, I think baby got thrown out with the bathwater, and now strength coaches are trying to tell the sport coach how to practice and when to practice.
I think you have to, going back to have a first principles mindset, you have to have an understanding of what the coach is trying to achieve. What do we want to get done? What are we looking at? Are we in a big tactical stage where we feel like we have a really young team who needs a lot of time on task to improve? Or are we an older team with a lot of orthopedic cost issues and we feel like, we're running the same offense we've ran for the last 3 years? We don't necessarily need a frick ton of time on task. I just need this shit to be short, crisp, and fast. So I think understanding the theme of like, as a coaching staff, what do we want to accomplish week to week, block to block? And then just trying to give options to a coach of like, hey, we think this would help support what you're trying to get done. Whether that might be something as simple as like, hey, can we create a low, medium, high practice face? And then that way we can say, hey, this week, I think it'd be a great play call if, they're coming off of some time off. We don't know where they're at. Maybe rolling with two lows and a high and then letting them rock in terms of what they want to do on those days. But I think establishing consistent jargon with the coaches, understanding what they're trying to achieve, and then just giving them play calls to help support what they're trying to do. Rather than just looking at players as like robots and saying like, hey, this guy's only needs 3,000 yards today. Hey, he needs to be off. His acute to chronic workload is spiking right now. So that's been, really helpful in my experience.
And it sounds like the key to that is time spent with the coaches.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't have that time, like how do you maximize it? Whether that's calling people that they know, whether that's watching podcasts like the one that we're on to figure out what a coaching philosophy is, whether that's talking to a former player that played for this guy, whether it's kind of like looking at the nucleus of your team, like you can kind of get a feel for if I'm one of the youngest teams in the NFL and I got a lot of guys who haven't played a lot of ball and I'm implementing an entirely new system, then, it probably says we're probably going to need a lot of time on task. Is my coach a walk through, jog through guy in previous stops he's been? Does he value that? Yes, no. Is he a no, we want to take team reps? Is he an indie guy? I think indies were guys. So like figuring out that as fast as possible, you can be in alignment with the coach and providing them play calls to help support what they're trying to get done. But if you don't know any of that and you're trying to provide play calls, like you could find yourself in trouble real quick.
I don't think I want more people to rewind and listen back to what you just said right there, because everything that you just said was not only time. Yeah, like you can't just go into the new head coach or the new OC and start asking vague questions. But when you do everything that you said, hey, coach, based off of what you did at this stop and based off of this stop, I am guessing you might want to do this. It is so much, it puts the question in a different frame of mind because it shows that you've did a little bit of the work, and now they're more willing to invest that more time because like, wait, Griff asking these great questions, or whoever, now they understand me. Seek first to understand rather than to be understood, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that impact, like having that knowledge base, again, zooming out and understanding the why you're doing, it empowers everyone in the building. If you have a coach, I've had coaches before that say, I love walkthroughs because in an hour I can fit 110 plays in cerebrally. Whereas if I have a practice, like we can only get through 30 to 40 plays. If I have a walkthrough, I can get 110 plays in. So like on these days, I wanna walk and I want to jog through more. Okay, now that we know that, that empowers us with our training template. We can be more aggressive in specific areas because we know it's not as going to be as physically taxing when they go out there on the day that they have the walk or the jog through. Vice versa, if a coach is like, hey, I value team reps, competition team reps, and I want a lot of time on task. So on Wednesday, like we're gonna have a lot of team reps. If you don't know that and you're programming a heavy leg day, or a big, central nervous system driving day, you're kind of like misalignment with the whole orchestra, the whole organization. So just knowing that empowers everyone to do their jobs a lot more effectively.
Right now you're talking to a lot of college football strength coaches, a lot of them in the P5 world as well, or others in the FCS level. What would be your piece of advice to them on how they can help mold these guys that are going to be coming up into eventually you and other NFL organizations, because they're starting to now adapt the OTA model, right? And they're in player development. Like, what are some things that you would love to see a really good college program doing in terms of pumping out players that are going to be becoming draft eligible, moving up into your league where you're like, hey, more athletes need to be doing X. And I'm not saying I'm not calling out any university or
Yeah.
anything. I'm just saying, hey, from a high level, athletes used to be able to do X. They don't do it as much now. Or, hey, you know what? Things used to be, it was bad with this and things have done a really good job. We would love to see more coaches doing this.
Yeah, I think having just a general foundation of training, is going to be critical moving forward because so many of these guys are bouncing around different places. And when you talk about like that OTA model,
Yep.
there's so much autonomy for the athletes to go different places. And now that they have money, you have so much access. Not only can you see a workout or a person training on Instagram, you can physically reach out to that person, fly that person out, and be training with them by that Friday. So in terms of the bandwidth of training that some of these athletes are doing, it's all over the place. Like it can Pilates, field work, footwork, this, PT, AT, strength and conditioning. So they're just spread in so many different areas that I feel like a lot of athletes are kind of losing just the foundational principles of like how to squat, how to hinge, how to bend, like just general proximity and acclimation to just training. And I don't know what the fix for that is. I don't know if that's something that is going to get worse over time, just based off the ecosystem. But that's one thing I've noticed is just the training background of a lot of these athletes is changing rapidly.
How about the conditioning aspect of it? Because it's gotten popular to say, conditioning doesn't matter. It's not as important. Is that something where coaches, putting the premium on it, whether it's after kids doing their pro day, after they're doing the combine, things of that nature, like, hey, make sure you're dialing that back up, or has that been
Yeah.
like, no, not even noticeable?
Um, I feel like this is a very, I would say, vague topic and my thought process on conditioning are very, I would say, unique. I think once you get past like a prerequisite, metabolic base of like I'm in shape, I think the quicker you can get comfortable doing the task you're being asked to do, the quicker it's going to make you look like you're in shape. A lot of people will say like this guy's not in football shape. If you're not comfortable, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, and you're doing twice as much work to perform a task on the football field, like you're constantly going to look out of shape no matter what type of shape you're in. If you know the playbook like the back of your hand, you understand your technique, you feel comfortable with the coaching staff, and you're going through this, like all of a sudden you're in shape. So a lot of times, when athletes will come in the football field in that first week and it's like they're not in football shape, a lot of that is anxiety. It's a lot of just inefficient movement. It's a lot of like not knowing what you're being asked to do. So like really smart football players are perceived to be in better shape just because of where they're at on the field. You know what I mean? And it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with their conditioning. So I'm a big believer on like be a student of the game, man. Like understand what you're doing, know what you're being asked to do, like understand it, execute it, and you're gonna look like you're in amazing shape if you go out there with that mentality rather than you just going out there and winging it.
That makes a great point because their heart rates are going to be completely jacked up even if they are in good shape because of that anxiety of, oh man, I don't know what's going on. Oh man, if I don't make this play, I might get cut. Like that
Yeah.
type of thing is not going to allow them to express whatever they wanted to learn.
Yeah, I mean, even somebody that has a background in fighting, you know what I mean? If we took similar training approaches for 2, 3 months and did the exact same exercises, just because psychologically you're more comfortable in the ring and you can control your breathing and you understand what you're getting yourself into, you're going to look like you're in significantly better shape than somebody where all that's new for them. So using that fighting analogy, it's like the quicker you can get more comfortable in the ring with what you're being asked to execute, the quicker you're going to look like you're in better shape than your peers.
Yeah, just like when at the end of a game or in, those playoff situations or whatever it is, like, hey, we've been here before. We can draw upon that well of knowledge, and you got the Kobe thing back there. Like, Kobe been in the
Yeah.
playoffs for a while, right? Like, when you've been there, you feel much more comfortable when you're in that deep end because you've been there and you can draw on that experience.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And I think when you look at GPS, I think player load has been a really popular metric a lot of people look at. You'll notice that really inefficient players have very high player loads. And a lot of times it's just being out of position, being out of phase, trailing, being behind. You're just constantly in a position where you're working significantly harder than the next person. And that just goes back to being a student of the game, understanding what your task is, understanding the technique that you're executing it under. So I'm a big believer on like we're here to train guys to be able to play football at a high level. So the quicker that they can play football at a high level, the quicker it's going to exude great training.
Do you ever have
But
any
if
athletes kind of push back on you, be like, but okay, I get that, but like, hey, help me run more. Like,
No doubt,
in
yeah, yeah.
is there then, and again, I ask it for any of our listeners that might have that in pushing back, being like, hey, I want you to help be a better student of the game. Like, and look, I'm not trying to not do the extra work with you, but I'm trying to help you understand how this can, like, let's actually set you up for success longer term. And this is the root cause. Sure, we're gonna do some whatever thing to make you feel like we're scratching that itch of being in better shape, but when you get
Yeah.
fix this underlying issue, that'll really take care of what you're worried about.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, too, like you just said, like you still got to feed the beast. And if there's an athlete that is adamant that they want to improve in that area, like you work for them. Your job is to show them objectively, like we can help improve in this area. So whether that's heart rate, whether that's drawing out a 3 month plan in terms of like, hey, this is what we're gonna do, this is what we're gonna get to. Hanging your hat on repeat sprint ability. Hey, we're going to set up vault units. We're going to run a 15-yard sprint. We're going to have a 30-second break. We're going to do 10 of these. We're looking at like time decrement, speed decrement from rep to rep. When we first did this test, this is what you look like. When we did this test the third time, this is what it looked like. So we're showing improvement rep to rep in terms of your speed not dropping off in this repeat sprint ability bucket. When we did this conditioning deal that we just did, like your resting heart rate started here, it spiked here, and it got down to here significantly quicker than it did 3 months ago. So, like, objectively showing athletes how you're improving in these areas, I think is critical and valuable, not even just on an individual scale, but on a group and a team scale. So, like, I'm always going to preach to our staff, make sure that we're showing them and we're educating them what they're doing and what they can expect. But underneath that all, like I'm still a big believer in like the quicker you become a student of the game, the quicker it shows up on the football field.
And I think that'll show them when you're doing both of it. It's not a either or. It's a yes and, or it's a both and, because you're serving both needs that the athlete has.
Yep. Yep.
How have you seen the speed of the game continue to evolve from your years working in it, of, hey man, like these guys, how much they're bigger, they're faster, and just the evolution of it all, as you take a kind of step back and look into it all.
Yeah. I mean, I just think by nature, like the guys are getting they're recruiting faster DBs. You're seeing a lot more nickel dime packages, linebackers, the way that they're built, like they're not 230, 240 anymore. A lot of these guys are 215 to 225 leaning, can run. On top of that, I think that just the evolution of the football athlete in terms of like watching film has just increased so much that these guys cerebrally, depending on who the coach are, like will look like they're playing out of their mind just because they know what they're expecting, and will look fast, like a top five fastest guy on the team on the field. But when you get him out here in the training session, it doesn't necessarily exude in a sprint or a race. But when they're on the football field, they look like the fastest guy out there. And I think you have conversations with those guys. It's like, hey man, what do you just like flip a switch on game day? And it's like, nah, I mean, I saw that formation. I knew what they were going to be in. And the minute they snapped the ball, like I was decisive and took my shot. And it's like, dude, that's impressive. That's really impressive.
Yeah, and being able to then speak life and empower those guys so everybody else starts to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
And then within that world of the nutrition thing, hearing you say that, how do you recommend our strength coaches work really well with their nutritionists in their situation? So you guys are onboarding college athletes into your ecosystem. They're onboarding high school athletes or potentially other college players. What's the best way for that strength coach to collaborate with nutrition and do it the right way, but then also collaborating with the sport coach or the coordinator to make sure that they're getting the athlete that they want, but then also at the core respecting that athlete and their individual differences and their anthropometrics. I think that's the
Yeah.
appropriate word for their height and their
Yeah.
wingspan and all that.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you zoom back out and you figure out, what is being asked of this athlete. What are we asking them to do? Is it, hey, this is a rushing edge, or this is an edge we're expecting to set the run on third and short, or is this a guy that's going to rush the passer and probably drop back in pass lanes, then also is going to play special teams. So getting clear expectations in terms of role clarity, I think first and foremost is really important. Second, I think empowering people, again, I go back to that word, having shared ownership, understanding that like making sure your dietitian is in there when you go through your practice builds, when you go through your
Ooh.
schedule builds, so you can get their intake in terms of like, no, I don't like that filling window. If a guy's dehydrated, I feel like you need this much time to get him back. Like that's not enough time. Could we do this here? But I think having shared ownership, so that way when you wake up and you go into the day and it's Monday, from the start of the team meeting to lunch to the end of practice, everyone in that room feels like I had something to say with our schedule today, and I know what I do fits within it, rather than just sending somebody a PDF and be like, "Yo, here's the schedule." You know what I mean? Like we start on Monday, get the dietitian stuff going, and wherever it fits, it fits.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And within doing that, does that also then include travel and sleep and lifestyle adjustments within all that?
Yeah, all of that, man. We were really fortunate last year to be empowered to put together. Past 2 years, we called it kind of like a travel committee. So we had person from our nutrition staff, strength and conditioning, sports science, AT, and then ops, where they would sit down, put their heads together, reach out to connects they had. Josh Nelson was on that. Knew some guys from NASA that presented to the group.
Wow.
Looked at all of our away games, whether they were international, whether they were cross country, or whether they were the quicker ones, and figured out, hey, this is the best play call in terms of time to leave, when to come back, when to caffeinate, when to get the lights off. And they onboarded the rest of the organization onto what they had been working on prior to the season. So that was gangster to be a part of, and it was awesome to provide that lane autonomy for those guys to create that.
How do you then? What I'm thinking of is I'm thinking of some of the guys I used to have at Towson. Would be like, Coach, that's great, but it's time to play ball. Like I don't want to think about all that, right? Like, how do you live in that duality world of like, okay, we've got all
Yeah,
that planned, but now it's time to just like, hey, you know what? Maybe you don't
yeah,
feel great. Maybe it is like, yeah, it was a
yeah.
long trip and we did everything. How do you then balance that dichotomy of like, hey, now it's still time to go win that game and go play some football?
Yeah. I think as much as this stuff that we're talking about can remain behind the scenes, the more impactful it can be. Like you're
Mhm.
trying to provide environmental constraints that when you send it out, the complexity was on your end, the simplicity falls on the athlete's end. The athlete just gets a schedule. We're leaving 4 p.m. on Thursday. We touch down at 6. We'll have a team meeting at this time, and we go and play ball at this time. They don't understand why we're leaving at that time. They don't really understand what the purpose of this is. But behind the scenes, there's a tactical reason of why we decided to do what we did. The athletes that are super cerebral, that want to be involved with that, they'll ask, and obviously we'll privy them to like, this is why we decided to do that. But I think as much as you can allow the athlete to go out there with a quieted mind and just focus on playing football, the better version of the athlete you're going to get.
That actually leads my question that I had written down here was balancing data, staff input, coaching intuition, athlete intuition. Like how does that balance? Because as I've talked before, and we said things have evolved since you played in 2012.
Yeah.
That like I mean it just wasn't. I mean when I was 2012, I was at University of College Park. Like we didn't have VBT tools, we didn't have GPS. When I was working at Iowa, we were one of 4 teams that had it in 2013. So it's continued to evolve. And that's why, me asking you, how do you balance the data, staff input, but then also being like, you know what, my gut says this. And, I played ball and hearing these players
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah. I think, to a point, I look at this like you have the design portion and you have like the manufacturing portion. If we're like stealing automobile terms, designing the car and then actually manufacturing the car. So to me, that's like, this is your program. This is everything you want to do. But then there's the execution part of it. And when you're walking around the room during a coaching session and you're using your coaching eye and you're using your experience, like, does this feel like it needs to feel? Is it being executed at a high level? If we chose this exercise, does it look right? So at the end of the day, like I'm gonna hang my hat on: are we executing at a high level? I love our play call, I love our design, but are we executing at a high level? Because if we're not executing, then all that really doesn't matter.
Where did you learn that ability to take that detached point of view and see everything, because you do have so many different good perspectives that you're overseeing? Has there been a person, a source of leadership mindset that you go to? Think of it like a well that you're going to be able to give you that detached point of view and see things the way that you see them.
I mean, I can't give enough kudos to my first boss, Cos Kazadi. Obviously, just instilling a lot of that in me, and then from that point on, just interacting with really great coaches, whether it's Justin Lovett in LA, Reggie, whenever during my time in LA. I love to read, man. I'm an avid reader. I am enamored with CEOs. So like Reed Hastings, Netflix, Bob Iger, Disney, read Elon Musk's books, read a lot of on Steve Jobs, just got done reading Tao of Alibaba, reading up on the NVIDIA way. Like people that have been able to create amazing things, amazing cultures that have thrived. Like what is their values? What are their philosophies? How do they operate? And realizing like the consistencies in all these people as well is just like, how do you delegate at a high level? Make sure you onboard and have a great process around talent acquisition. And at the end of the day, how do you consolidate and compartmentalize 3 to 4 very high level decisions and make sure you're in a position that you can execute on those decisions?
What book are you reading right now? What did you just finish?
I just finished No Rules Rules, Reed Hastings, Netflix, which was a freaking awesome book. I'm currently reading this book called Super Communicators, which is just basically communicating at a high level. But sometimes I'll flip it up, man, and I'll just read up a straight fiction book if like I'm out of it. I was just reading a book by Blake Crouch, which is a fiction story. So sometimes it'll just kind of go all over the place. I listen to music all day in the weight room. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's only so much NBA YoungBoy, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and like AC/DC you can listen to, man. So like my newest thing the last couple of years has been like audiobooks or books. So it kind of helps give me a balance.
Yeah, no, we had some balance in the weight room, like you said. Rod Wave was a nice change of pace because it wasn't
Yeah.
as fast. Like it slowed it down a little bit.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I feel like the minute a new album drops, like I've heard it in the first week 3 times already. So,
Ain't that the
yeah.
truth? What
Yeah.
is the current like thing, the problem, the thing that you're most excited or trying to learn the most about right now?
I would say staff alignment. I'm very big going down this lane right now of just like empowering people. And I've been in a position where I've been assistant, and it's been awesome to kind of create that for myself. But like, how do I create that for a staff? Ultimately, I think once that happens, an organization, but just like empowering people to be the best versions of themselves. Like, I don't think that happens by accident. I think, you have to create an ecosystem that's conducive in. And like I've just been really big on engulfing information on like what does it look like to create that ecosystem day in and day out.
That's fair. What has been your best failure that you've been able to learn the most from? And I ask because a lot of our strength coaches, some of them, they reach out to me right now. It's they're going through a job transition, or they might be in something where like, man, they feel like they've hit a failure. So it's always good for people to hear a success story from other people that have gone through certain valleys,
Yeah.
if you will. What has been the best lesson that you've learned from a certain failure of yours?
Um, well, I will say that even dating back to my playing days as a professional athlete, like I tell people all the time, like I've been fired like 10 times. I mean, it sounds crazy when you tell people, but some people have never been fired a day in their life. Between the amount of times that I've been cut and then moved on in the volatile field that we work in, like I've been fired like 10 times. So just kind of not necessarily being numb to that, but figuring out how to benefit from that in terms of reinventing yourself. Really hard times of reflecting on like what would I have done differently? Really leaning on creating a network. So when that time comes, like, do you have a network to lean on? Or you realize, like, damn, I haven't reached out to anybody this past year and I don't know nobody right now. And that's a really scary place to be in. And then you're fortunate enough to get another job and you're like, hey, I don't ever want to be in that position again. Let me reach out and connect with my people. So I think every time, I've been fortunate enough to get fired and move on to a next job, I've gotten better from it, whether that's reflecting on something I did or acquiring a new skill set or realizing there's something differently I would have done. Like, don't be scared to fail. And I think if you're going to get into this field, it's not a matter of if, it's when. And are you setting yourself up? Are you setting yourself up to make the next transition? Like, do you know what your next move is if that were to happen next week, next month, next year? Or is that punching you in the mouth? And you're like, what do I do? You know what I mean? So I feel like that honestly has like been huge for me throughout my life.
Kind of wrapping it up to respect your time, what would be a resounding message that you would leave to strength coaches nowadays? To kind of wrap it up, like, hey, this is kind of where I see the industry's gone over the last 5 years. Post COVID till now, and then okay, now moving forward these next couple of years. What do you want to see? What do you want to see? For the betterment of athletes, the field of strength conditioning as a whole, because we are still within the first 100 years.
Yeah. I think to your point, just kind of like readopting a mindset of around like what we view as success for an athlete. I heard Bobby Stroop say one time, and it stuck with me because I thought it was freaking awesome. Like,
Mm.
strength isn't a number, strength is an expression. And, watching a DB backpedal, turn and run, put his foot in the ground and break laterally to pick someone off, to me is an expression of strength. So like it's hard to objectify, it's hard to quantify. And I know, I spent most of my year quantifying, squat went up 50 pounds, vertical jump went up this, 40 drop this. But just figuring out, different expressions of strength within
Mm.
athletic movement. It's tough. It's a tough concept to wrap your head around because it's hard to grade it and it's hard to judge yourself off of. But are you empowering these athletes to do some really, really special things on the football field that aren't necessarily shown in weight room numbers?
Ain't that the truth? Because it's so when you're like, man, this kid ain't that. He ain't all that in the weight room, but golly, he can fight off, a tackle. He could be that DN that makes the
Man,
play mushy. And now linebackers, like, it don't even show up in the stat sheet, but he made that play happen.
yeah. I mean, like, and just seeing like still shots. Sometimes we used to like. I remember we started at Baylor, but we used to do it in LA too. Like, just like print off still shots and throw them up on the TVs to like just trying to like make guys feel good. They come in, they see a picture of themselves, that's cool. But like I would see a picture of like Von Miller. It looked like he was like 4 inches off the ground, and the angle at which his ankle was just incredible. And that wasn't necessarily a squat number or a VBT number or a vertical jump or a speed output, but like that to me was an extreme expression of like strength. And like, how are we empowering that? How are we getting more guys to look like that? And what does that look like? Is it squat? Is it clean? Is it bench? I don't know if it's necessarily one of those things. Let's not forget that completely, but
Correct.
let's start rewrapping our mind around like what are some other examples of strength?
No, I mean, I literally just wrote a article about it that I put out last week, and it's that basketball player that's boxing out, fighting somebody for the ball, going up and getting it, or that whatever position, if it's a tight end, a receiver, or a running back that's catching the ball out in space and contorting their body and fighting somebody off, like that is an expression of strength that, like you
Yeah.
said, maybe doesn't show up as my bench press or my pull up, but they are strong because they can own their space. A buddy of mine, Mike Chapman, who we worked together at Towson, he's now at LSU. He called it your sphere of strength. He wanted to make somebody's sphere as big as possible because he had basketball players
Yeah.
that needed to be able to own it and pivot and just be strong wherever they were. And that's something that has kind of stuck with me.
Yeah. I like that, man. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and just
It
being
kind
able
of
to
it
make
kind of
that
seems like
sphere.
to some coaches that have hung their hat on like objective numbers their entire career, that's a little scary to talk about. Just it's hard to objectify. So it's kind of like no man's land.
And it also flips the like a functional movement screen on its head, where in the FMS you're like, hey, let's see how bunched up they can be on a lunge. Where like chat was literally like, no, I want to see how long you can be and how much strength you can own in that big long position, because I need you to maybe have that really long pivot and then step around somebody when you're going to the hoop or something.
Yeah, and I think like the fluidity of like athletes like movement is critical. Like I've seen rookies come in all the time, man, that are fresh off of training for bench, whether it be a DB that did 24 reps at 225, which is super impressive, has this exogenous amount of muscle on, probably just broad jumped 11 feet, ran a 4.4. So like on paper, this kid is an absolute freak. And you get him in a what we used to call EDD during Indy with the special teams. I mean, with the DB coach, everyday drills, and you tell them backpedal, flip their hips, flip their hips, flip their hips, come back downhill, do it again, do it again, do it again. Like it looks different from some of these athletes that are really fluid, and you're watching and you're like, man, that's impressive. What's holding this athlete back from looking like that? And a lot of times it's like they're just too muscular. Like they're not their movement is mechanical right now. How do we get you moving like a basketball player almost? So like to your point, like I'm always interested in learning stuff like that. That's really cool.
I'm gonna shut this off. Last question I have to
Yeah.
respect your time. What has been like maybe one or two of the best questions or conversation starters with athletes that you've been able to have and form relationships with them? Because to me, that's been the underlying key to everything you've said, is have a relationship with the athletes, work with
Yeah.
them. So what has been some of your like, hey, when I ask an athlete XYZ or these three questions or whatever, they just open up, and it has been something that has been maybe something that you learned in one of those CEO books or whatever that you had learned from.
Yeah. I don't know if I can systemize it in terms of just like it's a specific question, like I have a go-to.
Yep.
It's kind of just reading the room and figure out like I'm a big trash talker, man, like in a friendly way. I tell people all the time, like our staff motivates guys through bullying. So like I'm gonna trash talk you the first time I meet you. So if I hear you singing Rod Wave a little too loud, you know what I'm saying? I'm assuming you got girl problems. So I'm gonna come up to you and be like, damn, bro, like, you know what I mean? Like, everything good with the old lady? You know what I'm saying? And it's gonna create a laugh like this. And then slowly just start sneaking in, where you from, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, what's your training background? This, that, the third. But like it's really kind of reading the room, figuring out what an athlete is into. A lot of time what athletes listen to and what they passionately sing while it's going on will tell you a lot about them. A lot about them. And if you listen to those genres of music or you listen to what they're listening to, you can kind of tell. Like if an athlete comes in and he just puts on something chill, like you can be like, try to get a feel for like that's a lot of times I use the music they listen to as a parlay into a conversation. That's always worked for me.
Amen. Griffin.
The shoes they wears too. You know what I'm saying? Like I'll clown a guy for wearing Pegasus versus Jays. Like, hey man, like you know what I mean? Like I heard we signed a new DB with a little bit of swag. I come in here and you got the Pegasus on, man. Like some may match it up. You know what I mean? The last guy that came in had the Balenciagas on. What's up? You know what I mean? So just finding ways like that to connect with athletes, I think is huge.
Be a person. We
For sure.
are people. We are working
For
with other
sure.
people. You are not working with barbells. You're not working with dumbbells. You're not working with GPS units, force plates, VBT. They are all fantastic, but you are working with people, and people want to connect with other people. That is something that you cannot. I
No
just
doubt.
can't keep hammering that home because I want to make
Amen.
sure our listeners hear that.
Amen. Amen.
I appreciate you for taking an hour out of your day, Griff. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, click right here for videos just like that, and make sure you click here to subscribe to our channel. Have a great rest of your day.